Okay, let's talk about the impending economic cliff that we are rapidly approaching, and the unemployment situation, and the second stimulus package that was passed by the House that is likely to be visited by the Senate once they come back on July 20th, I believe. So the impending economic cliff is July 31st, when the beefed up $600 a week pandemic insurance for unemployment benefits runs out. That's really the only thing, that and the PPP are the only two things that are propping up this economy right now, with a little over 11% unemployment, a little more than 17 million people. Those two things are the only things that are getting people money to pay their bills, keep their mortgage payments going, their rent, food on the table, you name it. Those are the only things. So on the 31st, the $600 a week expires. So let's talk a little bit first about unemployment. Let's take a look at the report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that came out, the most recent one. So let's take a look at the findings here, the meat of it. We have the unemployment rate declined by 2.2 percentage points to 11.1% in June, and the number of unemployed persons fell by 3.2 million to 17.8 million. Although unemployment fell in May and June, the jobless rate and the number of unemployed are up by 7.6 percentage points and 12 million respectively since February. So what this tells us is that the situation is still terrible, basically. You're going to have people try to spin this, and they're going to say, oh, look at this sharp recovery. They'll probably show you cherry-picked graphs that make it look a whole lot better than it actually is. But let's be honest. This is like a doctor coming in and telling you, hey, listen, you got cancer. You got 2 years to live. Or he comes in and he tells you, hey, listen, you got cancer. You got 2 weeks to live. Either way, you still got cancer, right? Either way, the situation's still horrific. The unemployment situation is still awful. So they're going to have to do something else in this other coronavirus stimulus package. They're going to have to keep things flowing in order to get people by. If they don't, the economy will, the country's economy will just look, you think this is bad. Oh my God. I'm not sure that they can allow that to happen. So let's take a look at a little bit of what I found in the up-and-coming second relief package, and what I thought was just like some of them that's interesting. So we have this one here. This is the Senate Democrats push to extend enhanced unemployment benefits until jobless rates fall. So this one's pretty interesting. This is has to do with the $600 a week for the pandemic insurance for the unemployment. So instead of just tying it to like an arbitrary date like they did with the first time with July 31st, and then July 31st fastly approaches, and all of a sudden you're scrambling because the situation is still dire and people still need to get money. So what they want to do here is tie it to the unemployment rate in the state. So the legislation would extend the enhanced insurance through March, but reduce the amount of beneficiaries receive as the economy recovers. Once the state's 3-month average unemployment rate dips below 11%, the benefit would get cut by $100 for every percentage point the jobless rate falls until it slides below 6%. For example, beneficiaries would get a $500 per week if their state's average unemployment rate sits between 10 and 11%. Once it drops below 10%, the enhanced benefit would fall to $400 per week. So this makes a lot of sense to me, actually, and it sounds like it's just a better plan. So you kind of wean people off the unemployment, and then when the situation in their state starts to improve and the economy starts to come back in their state, that's when there's no longer a need for the beefed up unemployment. To me, this makes a little more sense. Instead of picking some arbitrary date, you kind of wean them off as the situation improves in their state. And instead of just hoping that on, September 30th or something, the situation is better, and then if it's not, you got to scramble and do something again. So this seems pretty good to me. I think they'll do this, or they'll just keep it at the $600 a week and pick some arbitrary date again. Either way, I initially thought that Mitch McConnell and Steve Mnuchin, when they came out real hard against this portion of the relief package, that Mitch McConnell is such just a vile human being that they really would exclude this from the next stimulus package. But the more I thought about it, I don't think they can. I really don't think they can. We have 17.8 million people unemployed, with coronavirus still raging, running higher than ever before, and in certain states getting destroyed by it, like California and Texas and Arizona and Florida, and some closures having to re-close things down. And you have the deaths as of today and yesterday are starting to creep up in these states, and there's more guidelines put in place. So it's only logical that when the next jobs report comes out, there are certain states that are probably going to see an increase in the unemployment. So they got to keep this going somehow. They got to get these people cash. The next one that I found that was pretty interesting, pretty different, was this one. It's like a back to work bonus. So this was proposed by Senator Rob Portman of Ohio. This one doesn't sound so bad as long as you keep the beefed up unemployment. It can't be an either or situation. It has to be this plus the beefed up unemployment. And then when they get off the beefed up unemployment, they take this. So it would state that if you take a job before July 31st, he proposed this back in May, I think. If you took a job before July 31st, you would get a $450 weekly payment through July 31st, which would be retroactive on top of whatever your new job is paying you. So this makes sense if it doesn't replace the pandemic unemployment insurance. If it's an either or situation, it makes no sense, because a lot of the people who lost their jobs aren't coming back. They're having a hard time finding a job. They worked in certain industries that have been completely decimated, and they're still decimated, and their employers aren't hiring. And if they are hiring, they're nowhere near hiring at the levels they were before this happened. So they're having a very difficult time finding a job. And if you're giving them an incentive to find a job, but there's no job to find, it really doesn't matter. I'm not sure that this is something that is going to make it in the final bill, the final act when it passes. Maybe it'll be revised a little bit somehow. And it also seems really unfair to the essential workers who have been working all along throughout the whole time and exposing themselves and their families to COVID. They really should be getting a bonus. But I get it's not about fairness. It's about spurring the economy back on and getting people back to work and getting things back to normal as soon as possible. So I get that. And then the other one here, which is interesting, is this $4,000 tax credit for travel in this next stimulus package. So what that one says is they want to extend the $4,000 up to a $4,000 household tax credit for 50% of your travel expenses all the way through 2021. So in the short term, this probably wouldn't help anybody out because a lot of people are unemployed and they're not going to be traveling regardless. And coronavirus is still a thing. People don't want to get sick or expose themselves. So they're not going to be staying in hotels a lot or traveling on planes and going to amusement parks and things like that. But this is something that can definitely help the economy through 2021 and get people out there again once the virus dies down or we get a vaccine, and incentivize people to go travel again and try to kickstart that portion of our economy. Get them out there on planes, staying in hotels, going to restaurants, the whole nine. And it definitely is something that's interesting. I'm not sure if it'll make it in there. It'll have a great money multiplier effect which is, if for every for every $1 you spend, it creates $5 of value. So that would be, this helps spur that money multiplier effect on more, because say you go out, you travel, let's say you go to a restaurant, you throw a tip down, $1 of that tip, the server uses that portion to pay their car note. They pay their car payment. The bank then gets that money, and let's say the bank lends that dollar to someone who is trying to start a business, and they lend that money to a new business owner, and he uses it to buy an asset so that he can have to run a restaurant or something. You see how that $1 has created value all the way down the line. Money multiplier effect is also a huge reason why putting money in the hands of people who spend it more, which is like middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, people who do these things, or don't just take the money and put it in an account somewhere or in some investment account, and it has zero or very low money multiplier effect. So I think this $4,000 tax credit in the short term really won't do anything, but if it's extended through 2021, the long term definitely could spur on some spending and some good things throughout the economy. And then, of course, you have the $1,200 stimulus check. That will probably be the same. That goes back out to everyone who got it last time. $1,200 for each individual, up to $75K if you make, $2,400 if you file jointly, up to $150K. The one difference is that they're pushing for is, instead of the $600 per dependent, they're trying to push it to $1,200 per dependent, up to 3 dependents. This is wonderful. I mean, why am I going to fight that, right? If my neighbor or my cousin or my enemy, whoever they are, if they get an extra $600 per dependent, great, more power to them, wonderful. But I mean, so it sounds good to me. That's something that I'm not sure if they'll beef it up or not to $1,200, but the standard one, what it was last time, $1,200 per person and $600 per dependent, that's going to be in there. I have no doubt that'll be in there. This is something that is definitely needed. The economy is reeling. The senators need to get back July 20th. They're going to have to go through this and iron this out rather quickly and get this money back to people within, I would imagine, 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks max. And well, hopefully they do it. Hopefully they iron it out and get this thing rolling, because people need the help, that's for sure. If you've made it this far into the videos, I want to thank you. Appreciate watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you feel you got to do.